All right. So I'll begin. Thank you for tuning into our webinar on study permit processing during the COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Shikhar and I'm the Outreach Officer at the Consulate General of Canada in Chandigarh. The purpose of this webinar is to inform you about the changes to study permit application and the current travel restrictions in view of the ongoing pandemic. The target audience for this webinar are students from India who are interested in pursuing a Canadian post-secondary education. Before we begin, please note that the contents of this webinar are valid only as of today. For most current information on IRCC processes and travel restrictions to Canada, please visit our website www.canada.ca/immigration. To begin with, we realize that international students make significant cultural and social contributions to Canada. They also generate more than $21 billion in economic activity. Since the onset of the pandemic, IRCC has implemented a number of temporary policy changes to support and reassure international students and designated learning institutes. The fall 2020 semester has by far the largest international student intake throughout the academic year, and this is fast approaching. The most recently implemented measures were introduced on July 14 and are aimed at this upcoming cohort. The changes will continue Canada's reputation as a premier destination for international students, and they will demonstrate the importance of the international student program and contributions international students make to Canada. We very strongly encourage students to still consider studying at Canadian institutions, even if many DLIs have moved their fall 2020 semester to an online format. So our agenda today will cover the following topics. Number 1 are the travel restrictions to Canada. Number 2 are the exemptions to those travel restrictions. Number 3 is the study permit processing changes during the pandemic. Number 4 are 4 trips. And lastly, what you need to know before traveling to Canada. We will end the presentation with a question and answer session. Please use the chat to send us your questions and we will go through them after the presentation. To protect Canadians from the outbreak of COVID-19, the Government of Canada implemented travel restrictions that limit travel to Canada. Until further notice, most foreign nationals cannot travel to Canada, even if they have a valid visitor visa or an electronic travel authorization. These restrictions stop non-essential or non-discretionary travel to Canada. In the light of these travel restrictions, this list reflects who is currently able to travel to Canada. For example, Canadian citizens, Canadian permanent residents, and protected persons. It also includes foreign nationals who require entry for an essential purpose and are exempt from travel restrictions. Now let's talk about some of the exemptions to these travel restrictions. Basically, all temporary residents need to demonstrate that they are traveling to Canada for an essential purpose. Essential refers to reasons for traveling that are non-discretionary and non-optional. Emergency orders made under the Quarantine Act do not permit people to travel to Canada for optional or discretionary purposes such as tourism, recreation, or entertainment. Now looking at who are exempt. These are some workers, some students, some approved PRs, and potentially some visitors looking to reunite with immediate family members already in Canada. Please note that visitors will need an authorization travel letter to Canada if family in Canada is not Canadian or PR of Canada. Please also note that students and workers will not require such letter. In this slide, let's look at travel restriction exemptions for students in more detail. Not all students will be able to travel to Canada under the current travel restrictions. To be exempt, you must be in possession of either a study permit visa issued on or before March 18, 2020, or a port of entry letter of introduction which indicates your study permit was approved on or before March 18, 2020. Equally as important, as you also be able to demonstrate that it is essential for you to travel to Canada. For example, you have an in-person classes or already in the middle of your program of study and need to return to it. You can demonstrate this by providing a recently dated letter from your DLI that explains why you physically need to be in Canada for the fall semester. These documents must be provided to the airline at the time of boarding and to the CBSA once you reach a port of entry in Canada. Failure to do this may result in denied boarding for your flight or being forced to return to Canada at your own expense. As I mentioned in the previous slide, we will not provide any travel authorization letter for students. All you need to travel is your visa or port of entry introduction letter and evidence of your essential need to travel. This is very important to note that you should not travel to Canada until at most 3 weeks before the start date of your class for which your physical presence in Canada is required. For those who have already been issued visas for a previous semester but were not able to travel to Canada to attend, please send us a copy of your new LOA and advise us of your new start date. You can send these documents to us via the web form. Now let's look at what processing changes have been introduced as a result of the pandemic. Visa application centers, also known as VACs, are currently closed. This means we are unable to accept any paper application submissions. As such, only online submissions are being accepted. On the IRCC website, we normally publish processing times for each of our missions for all of our lines of business. Please note that these processing times are no longer accurate, as there are processing delays due to reduced staff at the mission. That being said, IRCC is working very hard to process all visa applications in time for the fall 2020 semester. To do this, we need your help by submitting your application as early as possible and submitting all of the required documents as soon as possible. We are aware of many service disruptions that are causing delays in submitting a complete application. For example, we know that the VACs remain closed. This means that there is no mechanism to submit biometrics at this time. We know that the panel physicians are operating at limited capacity. This means that it may take longer for you to obtain an appointment to complete your immigration medical exam. We also note that some businesses and schools remain closed or are operating at limited capacity. This means that it may take longer for you to obtain the supporting documents you need for your application. All of that being said, we will not refuse any applications for non-compliance or failure to submit the requested documents at this time. This means you do not need to have to worry about the deadline specified in the request letters sent to you. However, note that we will not be able to complete the processing of your application until all required and requested documents have been received. So it is in your favor to submit these documents to us as soon as possible. The exception to this are 3 following documents. You must provide them upfront or your application may be refused. First is the application form. You do not have an application unless you complete the IRCC forms required. Second is the fee. This includes both the study permit processing fee and the biometrics fee. Third is the letter of acceptance, also known as the LOA, from a DLI or Designated Learning Institute in Canada. This is mandatory for you to submit with your application. Please note that we cannot physically issue any visas until the VACs reopen because we have no mechanism for two-way transmission of passports between you, the client, and us, the visa office. We are, however, attempting to return passports for any existing paper files at the mission, as we realize this is an important identity document for you. Any documents mailed directly to the mission will be returned to the sender, so please do not attempt to send your passport directly to us, and please wait for the VACs to reopen. So I've previously indicated that only those with visas issued on or before March 18 may travel to Canada under the current travel restrictions. The recently introduced measures address applications which have not yet received approval as of March 18. Here are those measures. First, complete study permit applications will be prioritized. This means that the application contains the forms, the fee, medicals, biometrics, the letter of acceptance, and all required supporting documents. Second, if your program of study will qualify you for a postgraduate work permit, also known as PGWP, and part of your course, that is fall 2020 semester, has been moved to an online format because of the pandemic, the time spent on the online portion while outside of Canada will still count towards time for your PGWP. However, the online portion must be 50% or less of your entire program of study. This means you will still need to complete a minimum half of your program in Canada for all that time to count towards your PGWP. Third, a two-stage approval process will provide some breathing room for students who are not yet able to provide biometrics or medicals. The first stage is the approval in principle, also known as AIP. This is essentially the eligibility assessment for your application. If you receive an AIP approval, your online course time will count towards time for your PGWP. This means you do not have to wait for a visa to be issued. Stage 2 refers to admissibility and final decisions to your application. In cases of approval, this results in visa issuance. Please also note that an AIP approval is not a guarantee of a visa. Stage 2 includes admissibility decisions. For example, you may be refused a visa despite having an AIP because you have failed your medical exam. So let's discuss in more detail what the two stages entail. So the AIP applies to applications which have not yet received final decisions as of March 18. It refers to the eligibility assessment of your application. Essentially, it means that even though you are still missing medicals or biometrics, you may still be able to receive an approval in principle on your application. The criteria for this assessment has not changed, neither the requirements nor how an officer makes that assessment. Here are the criteria. Number 1 is that you're a genuine student. This means you have demonstrated the academic and language capabilities through the submission of your previous academic transcripts and IELTS or TOEFL scores that you are able and qualified to complete a program of study in Canada. Number 2, you have been accepted by a DLI in Canada. This means you have submitted a valid letter of acceptance from a designated learning institute in Canada. Number 3 is that you have sufficient funds to pay for your studies, living expenses, and transportation without working. This means you have submitted final evidence of liquid funds to pay for these 3 things for the first year in school and demonstrated by explanation and proof of how you intend to pay for these 3 things, that is tuition, transportation, living expenses for all of the remaining years of study. And number 4 is that you will leave Canada by the end of your authorized stay. This means you have demonstrated through evidence and explanation what your ties are to your home country, which will motivate you to leave Canada once your visa expires. Once you receive the approval in principle in your application, a letter will be sent to you electronically to relay this information to you. You may also receive requests for biometrics and medicals if you have not yet submitted them. So this list provides the basic documents required to receive an AIP for the SDS and non-SDS stream. So let's look at the SDS list of mandatory documents for the AIP. First, you will need a valid LOA from a designated learning institute in Canada. You need to provide IELTS test results demonstrating 6 in each band. Only in-person test results will be accepted. You need to show a receipt or documentation from the DLI that tuition has been paid for the first year. If you also have scholarships or grants, you should also provide documentation to demonstrate this as a part of this requirement. Number 4 is that you have to provide a receipt for a GIC for 10,000 Canadian dollars. Number 5, you need to submit your most recent secondary or post-secondary school transcripts. And number 6 is that for Quebec-bound students, you need a CAQ. For the non-SDS streams, these are the mandatory documents for the AIP. Number 1 is to submit a valid LOA from a DLI in Canada. Number 2 is to provide IELTS or TOEFL test results. No online English test results will be accepted by us. Number 3 is to show documentation that demonstrates you have liquid funds and enough money to pay for tuition, living expenses, and transportation for the first year of school, plus an explanation and evidence of how you intend to pay for all the remaining subsequent years of school without relying on working in Canada. Number 4 is to submit your most recent secondary or post-secondary school transcripts. Number 5 is that you need a CAQ for Quebec-bound students. Additionally, we would also recommend you to submit a letter explaining why you chose your program of study. Admissibility assessments are made after AIP and before visa issuance. They include assessments such as medical, criminality, and biometrics. Among other things, this means that you must, number one, provide biometrics. Number two, complete your immigration medical exam. Number three, answer all questions truthfully and completely. This includes declaring all previous visa refusals for all countries, providing all of your background history for the last 10 years, and being truthful about any previous arrests and criminal history. And lastly, you need to submit only authentic documents. It is important to note that the required documents to submit under SDS have not changed. We realize that due to service disruptions, you may not be able to submit all of the required documents to qualify under the stream. Examples of this may be upfront medicals, IELTS results, GIC, etc. If you are unable to submit a required document, for example, upfront medicals, your application will be moved to the non-SDS stream. This section applies to students who are already in Canada. Essentially, if a student switched to part-time studies or had to take a break in studies, for example, the spring semester may have been cancelled due to the pandemic, they may still continue to work on and off campus, provided that they were previously a full-time student and already authorized to work on or off campus pre-pandemic. For off-campus work, the maximum limit is still 20 hours per week during the academic session and full-time during regular academic breaks. For students who are in essential services, this could include jobs in the health sector, for example. They can work more than 20 hours per week up until August 31st. To qualify for this, they need a valid study permit, must currently be in an academic session, authorized to work on or off campus, and must be working in an essential job. For those who are not yet in Canada, a common question we are asked is if you can go to Canada and work those maximum 20 hours per week while taking online classes for the fall semester. The short answer to this is no. I would like to remind you of what we discussed in the earlier slides regarding what students need to demonstrate in order to travel to Canada. Unless your physical presence is required for your studies in the fall semester, it is not essential for you to travel to Canada at this time. Additionally, only students with visas issued on or before March 18 can travel to Canada under the current travel restrictions. This section also refers to students who have already begun their classes in Canada. There are a number of reasons why a DLI may authorize leave during studies, such as strikes, family emergencies, medical reasons, etc. To still be considered actively pursuing studies, your authorized leave must not exceed 150 days from your first day of leave. Failure to do so means you have not complied with the conditions of your study permit and may result in your removal from Canada. If for whatever reason you require leave for longer than 150 days, you should change your status from student to visitor. Forms and instructions for this can be found on our website. It is important to note that you cannot study elsewhere or work during your authorized leave period. In case a DLI may have to close permanently or as a consequence of the pandemic, you should either A. Enroll in a new program of study with another DLI, or B. Change your status from student to visitor, or leave Canada. For the purpose of assessing if a student is enrolled and actively pursuing their studies, any time taken to transition to a new DLI and program, change status, or leave Canada should not exceed 150 days from the date the school closed. Please be informed that there is a significant difference between distance learning and the online courses I have been mentioning. Distance learning courses are always only offered remotely online, even under normal circumstances. The online courses I'm speaking about for the fall 2020 semester are normally offered as in-person classes. However, they have been moved to an online format due to the pandemic, and DLIs intend to return them to in-person classes post-pandemic. Those taking online courses for a program of study which would normally qualify them for a PGWP can have that time counted towards the PGWP even if they have not yet begun their studies in Canada. Students can complete 50% of the program online if they cannot travel to Canada sooner. For students who have already begun their program of study in Canada, switching from full-time status to part-time status due to the pandemic will not affect their PGWP eligibility. Note that this applies only to winter, spring, and summer semesters. For the fall 2020 semester, it is expected that students take on a full online course in order for that time to be counted towards the PGWP. In this section, we want to inform you of various fraud activities and misinformation related to immigration applications. You may scan the QR code on the screen as I speak. First is to protect yourself and never share your personal information with unauthorized agents. We always say that if something sounds too good to be true, in all probability it is. Number 2 are fraudulent websites and scams. Websites and social media accounts may claim to be from the Government of Canada. Applicants are tricked into transferring money for services that will never be provided to them. Our official website is www.canada.ca/immigration. Third are email scams. Please be informed that IRCC will never send you an email from a private address like Hotmail or Gmail. IRCC addresses always end in .gc.ca or canada.ca. Number 4 are telephone scams. Please note that IRCC will never ask you for any sort of payment by telephone. Lastly are unauthorized agents. We always say that you do not have to use a consultant to submit an application. However, if you do choose to use one, make sure they are legally authorized under Canadian laws to represent you. For more information, you can visit our website. Let's look at the conditions by which you must abide before air travel to Canada. The airline will require the following documents from you. Number 1 is your passport. Number 2 is a valid study permit visa issued on or before March 18. And number 3 are documents to demonstrate that your travel to Canada is essential. Failure to provide any of these documents may result in your being denied boarding. Additionally, you will be required to pass a health check performed by airline officials just before your flight. If you're showing any COVID-19 symptoms, you may also be denied boarding. If you're approved for boarding, note that you must wear a non-medical mask or face covering upon arrival in Canada. All travelers must undergo a health checkup upon arrival in Canada. It is also mandatory that all passengers arriving in Canada must self-quarantine for 14 days. This means that all travelers must, number 1, have a plan to self-quarantine for 14 days. Number 2, confirm and provide evidence that they have a suitable place to quarantine. This means providing an address and explaining how they intend to self-quarantine if other people live at the same location. And number 3, explain how you intend to respect that quarantine plan. For example, explain how you intend to receive essential items such as food. Please do not travel to Canada unless you have a viable quarantine plan. Failure to comply has consequences, which include a fine up to 750,000 Canadian dollars, 6 months in prison, or being deemed inadmissible, being removed from Canada, and banned from entering Canada for 1 year. For any further information, here are the many ways to connect with us and find more information. The IRCC website, as I've mentioned earlier, is www.canada.ca/immigration. You can also follow us on our social media handles on Facebook and Twitter by the name of Canada in India, and also go through our YouTube channel, Canada in India, where you can find useful information on frauds and theft. So this brings us to the end of the presentation, and I would now request Anandita and Elena to take on the questions which you've posted in the Q&A box. Thank you.
Thank you, Shakir, for that presentation. We now move on to the Q&A section of our webinar today. Your questions will be answered by our Student and Worker Unit Manager, Ms. Elena Balboa. As of now, I can see 423 questions being posted on the Q&A box. We will try to answer as many of them as possible. Please note that if your questions are similar to what others have asked, what we'll try to do is I'll be trying to group the same set of questions or similar questions so that they address the queries asked by a lot of people. So, Elena, are we ready to go?
Go ahead, please.
So, the first question that we have is, are SDS files really being processed as there have been no updates for the last few months? I haven't heard from anyone regarding AIP. Can you please give some timeline for processing of AIPs?
So, yes, I can confirm that SDS applications as well as non-SDS applications are currently being processed. Your AIP decision letters are forthcoming. We've already begun sending out these letters, so please be patient. We are trying to send out all of the letters as quickly as possible. Thank you.
The next question is, I applied for a study permit on March 7th, including biometrics and medicals. I haven't got my medicals updated in the portal till date. Applicants who applied around my timeline got theirs updated, so I'm a little concerned. Is there anything that I need to do with my application in terms of the medicals?
So your application, because it was not, it hasn't yet been decided, will fall under this two-stage process. So really what you should be primarily concerned about right now is just the stage 1. The stage 2 is when we'll address the medicals. So if your medicals are on file, certainly when your application is being reviewed for the stage 2 process, that medical will be applied to your file. If there's anything else that we need from you, with respect to that medical, if that is your concern, you will be receiving a request letter from us via the online portal for your case. So just continue to monitor that. So if you don't hear anything from us, assume everything is fine, and that you should just wait for your AIP, hopefully coming soon. Thank you.
Okay, the next question is, I have uploaded my most recent education documents, bachelor's degree, as the application asked only for recent education documents. Do I need to submit my 10th and 12th mark sheet as well? If so, can I do it now through the IRCC web form?
So you should try to provide as much information as possible in order to support your application. Your earlier years of schooling is not so important, because what we're more concerned about is that, yes, you've graduated from secondary school, you have your certificate, here are the transcripts for your later years. Keep in mind that if you are applying via SDS, so the requirement is that you provide the transcripts, all the transcripts from the last school that you attended. So if it is missing those, I'm not sure if the officer who's reviewing your case will decide to take it out of the SDS stream. If you have time now, I would suggest that you upload those just to ensure that you remain in that stream if that's how you've applied. Thank you.
The next question is, I have applied for my visa on July 18th. When can I expect my AIP? If I do not receive any response from IRCC even after commencement of my online classes on 8th of September, then what should I do?
So right now, processing times are not available because there is the pandemic that we have to deal with, and operations are limited. We are doing our best to work through all of the applications and hopefully get you your AIP letters as soon as possible. The current measures in terms of the two-stage process is allowing you to start your class, provided that you've already submitted your study permit application before September 15. So even if you get your AIP letter down the line, even after you've begun your courses, that entire semester will still count towards your PGWP, because this is part of the two-stage process. And I hope that'll give you the confidence to go ahead and proceed with the fall 2020 semester for classes, despite not yet receiving that AIP. Just make sure that your application has already been submitted. Thank you.
Thank you, Alina. The next question is, what will happen with the files submitted in paper before the lockdown?
So our office here in New Delhi is processing all of the paper files, including the ones submitted to Bangalore. We are working through those cases. I can tell you that the ones that remain in this office are the ones where we're missing information for the stage, your stage 1 AIP. Most of the other paper files have already been concluded. So you may want to check your emails, or if you've linked your application to an online account, check your online portal for a decision on your case. For the ones that are remaining, the main reason for not being able to move forward with these cases is that the LOA on file is for a previous semester, and we have not yet received an updated LOA to show that your enrollment has been deferred to a future semester. So if this is the case for you, please ensure that you submit to us your updated LOA as soon as possible so that we can also provide you with an AIP for your case. Thank you.
Okay, so the next question is actually asked by quite a lot of people. So I'm actually going to club it or just share with you the gist of it. So for those people who had already submitted their applications, full applications, including medicals, biometrics, and all of that, what they're asking is now, will they be receiving the final decision? Because if they do, then they will not be able to submit their passport till VACs open. So what is the decision that they are going to receive now? Will it be the first stage AIP or will it be the second stage, the final one? How does it work for those people?
So you will definitely get a stage 1 AIP if you pass all of the requirements for stage 1. In terms of getting a final decision, if you already have provided the information required for stage 2, we are not at this time finalizing any cases until we know when the VACs will be reopening. Why? We can't issue visas right now because the VACs aren't open, and there's no way for us to have this two-way passport transmission between us and yourselves. So until that happens, don't panic if you don't yet receive a final decision on your case, especially the ones with online accounts where you can see all of this activity instantaneously. Please be patient, wait for your AIP letter, and go ahead and have the confidence to proceed with the fall 2020 courses. Since you've already submitted your applications, you'll all fall under this two-stage process. Thank you.
Okay, so the next question is also being asked by quite a lot of people. So since VACs are closed since March 2020, biometrics are of course not being collected. So does that mean that all applications which are missing biometrics, medical or biometrics, the SDS applications will now move to non-SDS even though they have submitted the rest of the SDS documentation?
So biometrics actually does not form part of SDS. It is not a mandatory requirement upfront. So you can, even if you didn't provide biometrics yet, if your application has all of the other documents on file, you can still continue with the SDS process. For those who are missing medicals, now upfront medicals is a mandatory requirement for SDS, and the SDS requirements have not changed. So that means if you did not provide medicals with your application will automatically be put into the non-SDS stream. Thank you.
Okay, so the next question is, my course is hybrid. Will I face a rejection as my college requires me to attend classes in person?
No. How your school is delivering your program is of no concern to us, to be perfectly frank. We understand, like, because of the pandemic, that some schools are able to have in-person classes, some schools are able to only provide hybrid classes where the in-person portion may be later in the year, and some schools have just decided to stick to an online format for the fall 2020 semester. We understand this. This is not going to factor in our decision. So for the ones with hybrid courses, I think, especially if your school has decided that the in-person portion of your program is going to be later in the semester, they're hoping, like everyone else is hoping, that the travel restrictions will be lifted by then so that you can travel to Canada. But don't think that just because you're in a hybrid program, this will factor into your decision. It will not. Thank you.
So the next question is, if one has got stage 1 visa approval, does it mean that he will for sure get a visa in the final stage? And if not, then what could be the possible reasons for the rejection in the second stage?
So we'll say that if you receive stage 1 approval, so you get the AIP, there is very low risk for you to get a stage 2 approval, a stage 2 refusal. This is not a guarantee of a visa because you get AIP. It is no guarantee. However, it is low risk, meaning that the number of cases that actually fail at stage 2 is very, very small. And I'll tell you the main reasons. Number one, you've provided incorrect or false information on your application, or you've provided fraudulent documents. So essentially, you shouldn't be providing false information or fraudulent documents, and this is why we're refusing your case. Number 2 is a medical inadmissibility. So normally this relates to tuberculosis issues. And what students usually receive is instructions for what we call a medical furtherance. You're instructed to do a series of other tests and potentially a drug regimen to correct your current medical condition. And then you're given usually 12 to 16 weeks for this to all take place, and then you get another set of tests later to see if your condition has improved. There may be a second furtherance beyond this, and then very rarely have we actually seen that conditions have not improved, and that results in an actual refusal based on medical inadmissibility. The refusals resulting out of this are usually because the student has refused to comply with our medical instructions. So again, like, a lot of these things are in your hands. They're things that you can control. You know, number 1, answer all of our questions truthfully and completely. Number 2, the documents you provide should all be valid and legitimate and genuine. Number 3, if we provide you with medical furtherance instructions, please make sure that you follow all of them and follow them within the time frame provided to you. And if you follow all of these things, your risk for getting a stage 2 refusal will be even less. There are other things that we look at in terms of a stage 2 approval that really, for students, it does not, like, it. I've actually never seen it factored. For example, if you're a terrorist, if you are a spy, if you've committed genocide, like, these are things that are just so incredibly uncommon with this population. These are things you don't need to worry about that'll affect you. Like, we've never seen a police certificate with actual criminal history on there. Like, this is, again, a very rare thing for students, especially because a lot of you are just, you know, you've just become adults and you're just starting out in your life. You don't have this background history yet. So really, a stage 2 refusal, as long as you follow our instructions and provide correct and complete documents and information, the risk is very low that you should get a refusal at stage 2. Thank you.
Okay, so this one is also about AIP. So the person is asking, can I defer my intake or change my course after receiving an AIP? And if I can do that, then will it affect my second stage approval?
No issues with deferring your enrollment at all. So just make sure that you submit to us an updated LOA to demonstrate what your new start date is. A deferral of enrollment does not factor into stage 2 at all. Thank you.
The next question is, so the person has completed their master's degree, but they haven't received their final year mark sheet due to the delay of COVID-19. So he's asking, or he or she is asking, if their visa will be rejected because of not submitting the final year mark sheet, even though they have an unconditional letter of acceptance, which they have submitted as part of their visa application.
So if your school has accepted the fact that you can't complete your final exam and that they've given you this unconditional letter of offer, then it also does not matter to us. Thank you.
The next question is, how many days before start of classes can we travel to Canada?
So please do not travel to Canada until at maximum 3 weeks before the start date of your in-person classes. So number 1, keep in mind there are travel restrictions. So anybody who may have had a visa issued after March 18, please don't attempt to travel to Canada. Even if you do have in-person classes starting, there is a travel restriction. You will not be permitted to board your flight. For the ones who are travel restriction exempt, please do not travel until 3 weeks before the start date of your classes. CBSA may turn you around once you get to the port of entry, and at your own expense will be returned back to your home country. Or the airline may not even board you on your flight. And then if there are refund issues, you may lose out on that as well. Thank you.
So the next question is probably something which a lot of people are facing right now. So the person received their visa in January 2020 and their visa expires at the end of November 2020. Now, what they're asking is the expiry of a visa an essential enough reason to travel at this point of time? And if not, can someone extend their visa from outside of Canada? And if they cannot, what is the option that they have in this situation?
So number one, your visa expiring is absolutely not a reason for essential travel to Canada. Absolutely not. So please don't attempt to travel. Number two, if this visa was for a semester that's already passed and you were not able to travel because of the pandemic, you can ask for the reissuance of your visa, but you have to wait until vax reopen. And what does that entail? You need to explain to us in a letter why you need this document reissued. You need to provide us with your new LOA with the updated dates. Send us your passport with the actual visa in it, and then you also need to pay a $30 fee for document reissuance. So please wait until the vax reopen, and then you can provide all of these documents to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. So the next question is about the PGWP and the time that we are considering, IRCC is considering. So people are asking if the number of courses in each term is what we're looking at when we see the PGWP and we say that 50% can be done online, or is it the actual time that is counted? Because a lot of people have their course content and then they also have an internship or a training which is part of their course. So then in that case, how do we look at the PGWP scenario, which is 50% as of now?
So in terms of course load, we're talking about time frame. So your school decides what is considered a full course load, and a full course load per semester is what counts towards your PGWP. So essentially, all of your semesters divided by 2, that's your 50%. In terms of whether or not your co-op term factors into this, so this is a question we're asking. I regret that I don't have this information for you right now, but we will address this hopefully in one of our social media posts. So please do follow us on Facebook or Twitter, and we will post this information for you to have. Thank you.
Okay, so the next question that we have is, I probably know the answer to this, but people are asking when do we expect vax to open, or if we have any estimated opening time at all?
So we do not have an ETA on when vax are reopening. We are monitoring the situation closely, and we are regularly reviewing it to determine when it will be safe enough. So not just safe enough for VFS staff who have to work at these locations, but also for all of our clients, you, the clients, for when you're going to be using these facilities. So we just want to make sure that everyone is staying healthy and safe. And please stay tuned to the VFS website for any updates on reopening. Thank you.
Okay, so for the hybrid courses, I think you might have answered this, but this might be a little different. So for the hybrid courses, if the first part of the course was online and the second part was in person, or vice versa, so then the person has already done the online, and now for the in-person, if that gets converted to the online, so then will that be considered a full online, and then will that affect the PGWP in any way?
Yes. So the actual time that you spend on your course online and outside of Canada will factor into your PGWP. So if you end up spending the entire program online, then and it's online outside of Canada, you will not receive a PGWP at all based on this program. Thank you.
The next question is, how do we provide a new letter of acceptance if once we have received it from the university or the college? How do we send it to IRCC basically?
So you can send it to us via web form, or you can also email it to us to our generic mailbox. Thank you.
A lot of people are asking about the processing time for AIP. So would you like to comment on that? What can be the expected processing time, or what would we like to say about this?
So I realize that everyone is very anxious to receive their AIP. We are working very hard, not just the Delhi office, but our sister offices in Canada, including work cells that contain some of our evacuated staff who are working very hard on our caseload to try to get you the AIP as soon as possible. So please be patient. We are doing our best to try to get you this information. In the meantime, please be patient. Currently, I regret that I can't provide you a time frame for when you might get that AIP. But we have already started sending these letters, so hopefully yours will also be coming shortly. Thank you.
Okay, this question is probably from someone who's not in India right now. They're saying that if I'm in a country where the VAC is open and I'm able to submit my biometrics, then in that case, will my application have to go through the two-stage process? Will it go through the two-stage process, or what will happen to it?
So the two-stage process applies to every application right now that is still pending, right? So every application in our inventory will fall under this two-stage process. This process will end for any application submitted after September 15. So if you submit your biometrics, excellent. Your case can be further moved along. But keep in mind, we can't issue visas at this time. Actually, depending on the country you're at, if the VACs are open, we'll have to, if you wanted your visa, if your application is ready to be finalized, you could potentially use the VAC there to submit it to the office that's responsible for whatever country you may be in. Like clearly you're not in India or Nepal. So think about whether or not the IRCC office that's responsible for the VAC wherever you may be is able to process your application, and then they can print your visa. But if you're anywhere in India or Nepal, VACs remain closed. We can't print any of those visas here. Thank you.
The next question is, if I start my studies in September without receiving an AIP, and after I have started my studies, then I receive a refusal on my AIP. So in that case, if I do wish to go ahead and reapply, can I reapply with the same letter of acceptance, or do I need to have my documentation changed in that case?
So you can reapply with the same documentation, provided that, so with respect to the LOA, that it's still for a future semester, right? Or it's the current semester that you're currently studying. And you should provide information that you're already in that semester, you've already begun your courses. And that will make it acceptable for us to accept this document. In terms of other documentation on your file, you don't necessarily need to update them as long as they all still remain valid. Thank you.
So the next question is something I think a lot of the students in India are currently facing or want to ask right now, that this particular person has a lot of network restrictions, broadband connectivity issues, basically internet issues, because of which they're unable to do their online courses or online classes. And they have received a supporting letter from their institute, which says that they can travel to Canada because of this reason. So in a situation like that, can they actually travel to Canada just with that supporting letter from their university or college?
So number one, despite any issues, or if you have in-person classes or whatnot, you still need to meet the requirement that your visa must have been issued before March 18. And if you meet that requirement and you are having these bandwidth issues or internet issues, this is really an assessment made by CBSA and not IRCC. This does not factor into study permits. So you should contact CBSA to determine what they're looking for to be able to travel. Thank you.
Okay. Given the current scenario, people who had submitted their applications online before the lockdown and they were SDS applications, now when they do get processed, will they be, and when they are expected to receive their AIP, will they be given a priority over non-SDS like how we do in a normal scenario?
So right now we're all of our processing times are off, like whether it's SDS or non-SDS. And basically the entire network who's working on study permits is trying to work through all of the applications as quickly as possible. So the priority clearly is for students who've already had who've already applied for a previous semester and is now deferring enrollment, and as well as our fall 2020 semester students. So in terms of SDS versus non-SDS, right now the plan is just to get through all of them with no real priorities. We are trying to normalize processing times, but we first have to get through all of our backlog and inventory. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going through questions because a lot of them seem to be the same type of questions. And there are people who are asking about SDS and non-SDS, and will they receive the AIP within the same time frame? You've already alluded to that. So this person says, my presence is mandatory as it is a practical course. Can I travel to Canada without the biometrics? And what document is required in order to get accepted by the airline so that I can travel to Canada?
So if you haven't submitted your biometrics yet, that tells me that you do not have a visa. And with the current travel restrictions, you are not allowed to travel to Canada because only persons with visas issued on or before March 18 can travel. And if, for example, that travel restriction was lifted, there is no exemptions for biometrics at this time, like with respect to students. So biometrics still need to be provided eventually if you wish to receive a visa. Thank you.
So this question is about GIC. So I'm not sure if you want to address this or whatever you want to say regarding this. So they're saying that now that they have started their online courses in India, their GIC was initially made for a bank in Canada. So is there a way that the GIC money can be disbursed to them by the bank? So would you like to comment on that?
Please contact the bank directly. Thank you.
The next question, paper applications seem to have been refused drastically in the last few days. The paper applications which were submitted before the lockdown, maybe that's what they're referring to. So the person is asking, does that mean, or should we reapply in this scenario?
Sorry, I don't understand the question. Paper applications was reduced drastically? And
so what they're saying is apparently they've heard or they've probably come across paper applications which were submitted before the lockdown. They have now been refused. A lot of them have been refused.
Yeah. Got it. So yes, you can certainly reapply if you want to. As long as you're not barred from reapplying, go ahead and reapply. Thank you.
The next question is regarding funds. So the funds that one shows for SDS or non-SDS, so could they be the same type of funds, and what would those funds ideally be?
So we've discussed that you need to demonstrate to us you have liquid funds that can pay for tuition, living expenses, and transportation for 1 full year, plus a plan of how you will intend to pay for the remaining years of studies. So in terms of liquid funds, what does this mean? So if you're going to show us a bank account with savings to pay for all of these things, you need to also explain to us and demonstrate to us, where did this money come from? So did you work for it? Did your parents work for it? Did you sell property? Like, what did you do to earn this money? And you need to show this to us. If you have an education loan, so show us the education loan documents that demonstrate how much money was provided to you in this loan, what kind of collateral was put up in order to obtain this loan, etc. If you have scholarships or grants, provide to us the documentation that shows us you've been given these things and in what amount of money was given to you. If you're going via the non-SDS route, but for example, you still want to purchase a GIC anyways, this is a very quick way for us to determine if you have enough money for your living expenses. So please feel free, even if you're not applying SDS, to purchase a $10,000 GIC. That check marks that box. What else? I guess that's pretty much it. And then in terms of the plan, for how you're going to demonstrate how to pay for subsequent years of schooling. So it needs to be a viable plan, and the plan needs to be based on you not working in Canada. So please make sure that you detail what that means. If you need to provide evidence to demonstrate where the remainder of the funds are coming, you should provide that as well. Thank you.
Okay, the next question is about LOA. So the person is asking if we have an updated LOA, where should we send it to? Is there a particular email address?
So the Delhi Immigration General mailbox is perfect, or you can also upload it via web form. Thank you.
Okay, this question is, so I'm just sifting through the questions and trying to find the ones that we have not yet answered, the ones. Okay, people are asking about the AIP timelines, which we have already shared. Okay, so I think what is happening right now is people are asking the same type of questions, so that's why I'm kind of sifting through a lot of them. My study visa was issued on 7th February 2020, expiring on 31st August 2020. I also got my CAQ till 31st August 2020. In April, I got my new CAQ till 28 Feb 2022. My May intake of 2 years course was deferred to September. For visa extension, the portal is asking to fill up a visitor visa form. So is that the way to go about it, or is there something else that the person needs to do in this case?
So I'm actually going to need more information to answer this question. The way you phrased it, it seems like you're asking a study permit extension. So that is only available for people who are already in Canada on valid study permits. You can only apply for a study permit extension there. If you've already applied and your case is still pending, you can send us all of this updated information and we will update your current file. And then once your visa is ready to be issued, we will issue the visa based on the new dates. If you've already received your visa, but you have not yet traveled, so you're going to submit to us all of...
Elena, I think we lost you there. Are you there? Elena?
And then we will reissue that visa for you for the new date. Yes, sorry.
Okay, no, sorry. I think I lost you there, so it was probably my network connection. Sorry. So the next question is, can the student write to us for an authorization letter to board a flight?
Sorry, you're breaking up a little bit, but I think I heard that does a student need an authorization letter to board a flight?
Yes,
and the answer is no. So students do not need any authorization letters from Ircc. Please do not ask us for one. We will not give you one. What you need to board a flight is 3 things. Number 1, your passport. Number 2, your visa or your port of entry intro letter issued to you on or before March 18. Number 3, evidence of why your presence in Canada is essential. And what does that mean? You have in-person classes. You have hybrid classes where part of the program will require you to be physically present in class at one point during the semester. There are aspects to your program that requires you to participate physically, for example, laboratories, workshops, etc. You need to show us documentation that indicates this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alina. So would you like to address, because this has been coming up every now and then in the questions, the issue for students who have just a 1-year program. They started in either spring or summer of 2020, and they have actually completed 50% of their course load already while in India. So what should those students do now, or what is the way forward for them?
So basically, you can do whatever you want. You can either complete your entire program here, or you can wait until travel restrictions are lifted and you're able to travel to Canada to complete the last part of your program. It is honestly up to you to decide whether or not learning something new and doing some self-improvement is enough for you, or if you want all of that time to count towards a postgraduate work permit. If the postgraduate work permit is essentially your end goal, then you need to think about what the policy says, which is that 50% of the course, no more, can be completed online and outside of Canada. So that's the bottom line. If you need to defer, go ahead and defer. If you choose to complete this program while you're outside of Canada and completely online, and then you decide you want to take a different one so that you can actually go study in Canada eventually, that is all up to you. Thank you.
The next question is about working. So person is asking, can we work full-time while attending online courses from here in India? And if we do work full-time, will that work experience be counted towards our, I think what they're asking is towards their overall work experience in general?
So the 20 hours maximum per week that you can work is limited to Canada only. That is only if you're on Canadian soil. Because you are not in Canada, that restriction does not apply to you. In terms of that affecting you negatively somehow, frankly, you just need to make sure that you are devoting enough time to your studies, that you're actually absorbing and you're completing all of the necessary assignments and passing your tests. So as long as you have enough time to focus on that while working full time at the same time, that is completely up to you to do as long as you are outside of Canada. Thank you.
So this person is asking that I have my core classes starting from the winter of 2021 as per my original plan. So this is not a deferred admission or anything. So they're asking, should they wait before they apply so that the AIP process gets changed, or can they apply right now? What would you recommend in this scenario?
So, Anandita, you're breaking up, but I think the question is whether or not someone should apply early or not.
Yes.
And I always recommend that you should apply as soon as possible and do not wait. For those who are, contemplating whether or not they should apply for winter 2021 semester now, for example, go ahead. If, for example, winter 2021 is still online and you're not interested in online courses, you can always ask for a deferral of enrollment and go for another semester, but at least you don't have to think about the visa issue anymore. Thank you.
Melina? Or is it better now? Hello?
Nope, still not clear.
But
just bear with us for a moment. We're just experiencing some technical difficulties, but I'm just going to go through the questions myself for a little bit here. So the question is, I got passport requests on 25 May 2020, and I may be able to submit as VFS are closed, but I don't got approval letter or POE. How can I start online classes? So, if your visa if you got a passport request letter, likely we've approved your case. And so please check your online portal to see what the status of your application is. Because if you want your fall 2020 semester to be counted as part of your PGWP time, you can go ahead. If you see information that you've already passed your eligibility assessment in your online portal, don't worry about receiving a letter from us. If you can see this very clearly in your online portal, go ahead and start your study, start your program. The next question here is, can we fly to Canada in mid-fall semester if travel restrictions will be removed in between the semester? Yes, absolutely. If the travel restrictions are lifted, and if you have a visa, you can travel to Canada if your classes have already started. So even if there is no, even if that semester is still online, and you wanted to go to Canada anyways, it shouldn't be a problem as long as you are still enrolled and taking those online courses and that you intend to complete your program in Canada. Next question here.
Are you able to hear me, Alina, now? Is it better?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, so the next question is based on the language tests. So a lot of people are asking about the Duolingo and IELTS indicator because a lot of universities and colleges have accepted students with those test scores. So people are still unable to sit for those examinations. But then they already have the letters from the universities based on the Duolingo scores. So what is our scenario in that case? IRCC's take on that, basically.
So IRCC is not accepting any online English language test results. That's the bottom line. Please wait for IELTS, TOEFL, or PTE centers to reopen so that you can take the in-person tests as soon as they do. I think in some parts of India, there are already some test centers open. So have a look and see where you might be able to make an appointment to take your test soon. Thank you.
So this is again a funds-related question, but this has come up about a few times now, so I'm just putting it forward to you. So for people who are paying their entire education or funding their entire education with their own money, so they're not taking a loan, they're not doing anything. So in that case, what should they show? Or what is the recommended, because they might not have that amount of money in a liquid bank account at the immediate point when they're submitting their application. So in that scenario, what should she do?
So the requirement is that you show us liquid funds, whether it's in a bank account, in an education loan, in scholarships, in grant money, that you have this money to pay for at least your first year of school. That is the requirement. So if you are unable to demonstrate this, your application may be refused. That's the bottom line. Thank you.
The date of issue on the TRV sticker on passport and the date on the correspondence letter is different. Now, which date should we take into account in order to qualify for the travel exemption?
The one on your visa. Thank you.
Okay. The next question is, I think, what is happening right now is people are sending the same question till the time we answer it. And that's why there are a lot of repeat questions. Is there anything else, Alina, which you think you have not addressed or we have not received by way of question marks, right? By way of questions so far? Because so far what I can see is a lot of case-specific questions which we might not want to answer on a general portal platform like this. So anything that you might want to add, while I still keep looking for a more individualistic queries which will help the rest of the people also.
So I'm seeing some questions related to dependents who want to accompany their parents or their spouse to Canada. So currently, the travel restriction indicates that generally these persons will be banned from traveling at this time. However, if the student is already in Canada, your spouse, who will be on an open work permit, and any children you may have who may be on study permits or visitor visas, depending on their age, can travel to Canada under the current travel restrictions because they are there to reunite with family. So there is that option available for those who have dependents with them. So, but that only applies to where a student is already in Canada.
So the next question is, the person has applied for their visa from the US and has also submitted the biometrics in the US. So in that case, can the person get their passport stamped here in India if and when they get approved?
But you're in the US. Is this person in the US?
They've not mentioned if they are in the US right now. What they've said is they submitted their biometrics while in the US. So they might have come back as well.
Right. So our VACs are still closed. How are we going to get your passport? We cannot until the VACs reopen here in India. So if you are in India, I'm sorry, we cannot get your passport for us to issue a visa. Please wait. But at the very least, if your biometrics are in, so it means your application is still pending, you should be getting an AIP letter. And And once you get that, and you don't even have to wait for that AIP letter, frankly, if you want to start your fall 2020 courses. Thank you.
Alina, the next question is, some agents are saying that if a student takes PTE or TOEFL, they will get a refusal or they will be asked to take the IELTS again. Is this true?
So we've received this question primarily related to PTE. So for IELTS and TOEFL, I'll tell you, we prefer these two tests. And frankly, IELTS is the preference between the two because it's very easy for us to verify the results online. For PTE, for those who choose to provide this type of test, you need to send us your results through the PTE portal. You need to send it to Ircc through the PTE portal. If you fail to do this, we will be unable to verify your results online, and then we will ask you to submit something like IELTS instead. Please don't give us your PTE login or password because that's of no use to us. We've tried using those and the system will ask us all sorts of security questions, and because we can't answer them, we still can't verify your results. So really, if you're going to submit PTE, you need to send the results to Ircc through that portal, and then we can receive it on the other end to verify. Thank you.
So, okay, travel-related queries, which we've already addressed. As I have selected the course which doesn't suit me, so can I change the course after arriving in Canada?
Yes, absolutely. You can do whatever you like, really, as long as you're still meeting the terms and conditions of the study permit that was issued to you. So if the terms and conditions of that study permit is that you are to be enrolled full-time at a designated learning institution, so if you're changing your course or your program, that should still be at a designated learning institution, and that should still be a full-time course load. Thank you.
So this person will be traveling with their 6.5-year-old daughter. They are the student and they're traveling with their daughter. So they're asking what kind of visas should the child apply for, because she is going to study in kindergarten. So the person is also saying that they probably have already tried to apply for a study permit for the child, and the study permit application is asking them for a letter of acceptance from a DLI. So in that case, how should they proceed?
So because your child is of school age, yes, definitely you need to apply for a study permit for the kid. Now, in terms of an LOA for the kid, you don't need one because this kid's going to be going to public school in Canada likely. So that's perfectly fine. You don't need to submit that. What you do need to submit for your kid's application is not just the forms and the fees and the medicals eventually, but you also need to ensure that you have enough funds to support your child while you're in Canada. So it isn't enough that you're showing us funds for yourself for tuition, living expenses, and transportation, but now you also have to submit equally the same for your kid who's accompanying you, since that child is dependent on you. Thank you.
Okay, so the next person is asking, in one of the application I mentioned that I was never denied a visa before. I said no there because I thought it was for other countries, but later after submitting my application that it mentioned Canada as well. I was refused a visitor visa in past, but I had applied within a week and I got an approval also. I genuinely forgot to mention this and it was by mistake. I have already raised a web form informing the officer about my genuine mistake. Will this create any problem in my application?
Potentially. So I don't know all of the details, like despite these things that you've just mentioned in your question. It's up to the officer to decide if there was any misrepresentation on your part based on all of the documents in your file and your history with immigration with us as well. So I can't comment specifically, but there is a possibility. Thank you.
People are asking if they need to submit a police certificate when they submit their study permit application.
So for students, criminal history is such a very, 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 very rare thing. Please do not submit police certificates unless we specifically request one from you. Thank you.
So the next question is actually related to something that you've already mentioned. So for those people who have already done the 50% of their course here, if they want to take a break and like you said, they want to continue their next part, the next 50% in Canada, so they will actually have to put a break in their studies. So is there a stipulated time beyond which this break should not extend for them to, for that to not impact their visa?
So for us, as long as you're able to explain why there's a gap in studies, this is a perfectly reasonable explanation. It should not factor into your decision for your application. Just make sure that when you've submitted your application, that you explain that you've already begun your course. You need to take the other 50% in Canada, so that the entire time will count towards your PGWP. This is the reason for the break. Just explain that well in your application, and that shouldn't factor negatively. Thank you.
Okay, so this next question is about, sorry, I'm just flipping through that question. Okay, so the person is asking, since at this point in time, SDS applications do not seem likely to be processed because of non-submittance of the medical examination, then is it mandatory or is it necessary for them to submit 1 year's tuition in full if they're showing the funds in some other format and just paying the fee for the first one semester that they'll be doing right now?
So that's fine if you want to apply via non-SDS and you can show us liquid funds in other forms. That's perfectly fine. Keep in mind that in terms of submitting evidence of funds to us, we do not accept any assets or property that is not liquid. So sometimes we see property documents, valuations of jewelry and such. We do not take into account any of these types of documents. Thank you.
The next question is, if someone has uploaded a wrong document, so how can they replace it? Should they write to us? Should they do it through the web form? What is the step for that?
So certainly, please write to us via the web form to let us know that whatever the error may be and that you want to correct it with this new information. Thank you.
So this is probably addressed earlier, but because this is coming up again and again, I'm asking this to you. Is the AIP approval mandatory to start online classes?
No. So 2 things. You don't need the AIP to start your classes because starting your classes is 100% your choice. I know why this question is being asked, because you want to be doubly sure that when you start your classes, all of this time will count towards your PGWP. I understand this. I get this, because this is a lot of money you're investing into this education. However, this 2-stage process indicates that as long as you submit your study permit application before you start your classes, even if you get AIP after your classes have begun, all that time will still count towards your PGWP. So don't panic so much right now in case your AIP is late. As long as that study permit application was submitted before the course is started, it will be enough. So I would suggest, though, despite this, please submit your application as soon as possible. Please don't wait last minute. Please don't wait till September 15. Please submit it now, because in case there is a refusal, you have time to resubmit, right? And on top of that, it's, to me, also stress off your shoulders if you've, gotten rid of this one thing that you need, in that you've already submitted this application and you no longer have to worry about it. So please submit this application as soon as possible if you've not already done so. Thank you.
The next question is about SOPs, or statement of purposes, or letter of motivation. Are they mandatory to submit?
So they are definitely not mandatory, but they are to your benefit to submit them. So part of the assessment for a student is whether or not you're a genuine student. We want to know what is motivating you to want to study in Canada, why you've chosen this specific program. Sometimes that letter makes or breaks an application. So to me, when I assess applications myself, I read those letters. To me, they tell me a lot of things about you. And sometimes They explain some things that normally I might have just refused an application because it wasn't explained to me the why of it. So this letter is really to your benefit. I highly recommend that you provide one, but it is certainly not mandatory. Thank you.
Okay, so the following question will probably also be on the same line and maybe an extension of what you've already shared. Please tell us how to convince a visa officer that I will be leaving Canada at the end of my studies.
So I'll say that for students, because I know a big motivation for students is that after studying, you get to work. And through working in Canada, there is the option of eventually applying for permanent residence. We understand this. So really what I would want to know in this motivation letter is, as I mentioned, tell me why Canada. Tell me why this program. If there are things you need to explain about your history, for example, gaps in education, if you had to take a break in between your semesters, tell me all of these things. I value reading these letters because, like I said, they tell me a lot about the applicant. Now, in terms of actually telling us why you might return to your home country, we understand that this is not such a major aspect for a lot of students because, like I said, you want to work, you want to potentially maybe get permanent resident status later. So this piece is not so important in terms of how we process applications here in Delhi. But some of the things you can think about if you do want to address this is, for example, how can you use the education you've just invested a lot of money in when you return to your home country? Who are the people that you will be returning to in your home country? Do you have any assets or properties and such that are still in your home country that you need to take back? So these sorts of things are really what tell us what ties you have that will motivate you to return and leave Canada eventually. Thank you.
So for the next question, maybe I'll quickly take this up myself. So someone is asking if IRCC looks at the tweets that are sent to them or not. Yes, we do look at them, but in case you have not received a response to your tweet or your message, that is either because we do not have an answer to provide you at this point in time, or because that information is available on our website or our Facebook pages. So you can always follow us on both Facebook and Twitter. The next question, Elena, is, are dependent visas also being processed at this time along with study permit applications?
Yes. So if study permit applications come in a family group, for example, there is also an accompanying open work permit application for a spouse and study permit or visitor visas for children, absolutely, we will process all of them together. Thank you.
This person is asking, if we see that in our GSC account, our medical says it is updated, does that mean that a decision has been taken on our application?
No, that only tells you that your medical has been updated. Thank you.
Okay, so this is a question that we don't receive very often. Earlier, there was a criminal record, but later in court, the case got acquittal result and the case is now disposed of. Will there be any problem in getting the study permit?
So there's too many, there's not enough information in this question. So we really need to examine what, all sorts of things, like what happened, what did the court documents say, etc. So I really can't provide a definitive answer to this because I don't have the documents in front of me to assess. Thank you.
The next question is something that we've been addressing, but just to reiterate, Alina, would you like to comment on this? Is an English language proficiency test mandatory even under non-SDS?
So for India, definitely, we require some form of English language test results on your application. There may be some circumstances under which we might exempt you. For example, those persons who've studied abroad in, say, the US or the UK or Australia. So if you've graduated from a program or from high school from any of those countries, and the medium of classes were in English, Yes, we can certainly exempt you from that requirement, but otherwise, other students who have studied in India will require English language test results in their application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alina. I'm just going through. Okay, so this is again about English language. So if we have an IELTS general test score with us, which is already valid, can we submit that for our study permit, or should it only be an academic IELTS?
Generally speaking, we only accept the academic IELTS test. Go ahead and submit your application with all other supporting documents that you need, along with this IELTS general test. I mean, given the current pandemic situation and limited capacity of IELTS centers, we can review based on other documents on your file if we can exempt. Or if we'll still send you a request letter to ask you to submit your IELTS academic test. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just sifting through because we're pretty much coming to the end of our time, and looks like we have answered almost all the questions, because like I said, a lot of the questions were similar, and we're not answering any case specific questions over here. Okay, so maybe this one. My file is uploaded online with valid documents, but with an expired medical. So will IRCC request me for the valid medical, or will they refuse it straight away?
So there are certain circumstances where we might be able to extend your medical, but again, we need to review your file if a new medical is required or if we are able to extend it. Thank you.
Okay. And this question has come up a lot of times, but I think you've already addressed it, about people deferring their intakes after receiving an API, or sorry, an AIP.
Yes, go ahead if you want to defer, no problem. Just make sure you submit to us your updated LOA so that we can also update our file. Thank you.
I had a winter 2020 PhD admission and was asked to start in March 2020 as it was research-based funded program. I submitted a paper application in February 2020 with all the letters. Should I now submit any further documents as I haven't received any application number?
So because you've applied on paper, like honestly, please, for everybody listening, like I realize under the current circumstances, we're not accepting paper applications, but please do not ever submit paper applications again. Because if you don't submit online, you'll need to either link your application to your online account, or you'll have to wait for snail mail to come your way for updates on your application. And I suspect this is what's happened with your case, that the post office is not working. So whatever information we need from you is stuck in an envelope waiting to be delivered, right? So I can't comment on what is missing on your file or what else is required from you. Perhaps what I would recommend, if you haven't linked your application to an online account, maybe you should do that now, so at least you can get some updates on your case. Thank you.
Okay, maybe the last couple of questions. So this question is about the PGWP. The person is asking if they get refused for an AIP the first time and then they receive an approval for the second time in the first stage of the AIP itself, will that affect their PGWP?
Oh, I don't understand that question. You keep talking about approvals, but what is this to approvals?
Okay, so in that case, I think seems like we've pretty much gone through all the questions. Yes.
That's fine. We're at time anyway. So for all of you who are still online, thank you for tuning in. We really appreciate your time. We hope that we've answered most of your questions. And we hope that you've found some confidence to invest in a Canadian education, especially for the fall 2020 semester. As more information comes our way, we hope to provide to you more of these information webinars to help answer all of your questions and relieve some of this uncertainty and fear in terms of applying for study permits. You know how to reach us, especially on social media. So please monitor our Facebook or Twitter accounts for updates. For VAC reopenings, please monitor the VFS website. For those who have not yet submitted updated LOAs, please submit those to us as soon as possible. Upload them via web form. That would be fantastic. And other than that, thank you again. Stay safe, take care, and hopefully one day we get to see you in Canada. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alina, and thank you to Shakir for the presentation. Thank you once again for joining us, all the participants, and all the best to you.